Welcome to this new Publish.Africa podcast. Publish.Africa podcasts teach entrepreneurs like you how to navigate the African free trade area business world. No matter what level of business you are involved with, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice when you listen to a Publish.Africa podcast.
Good morning. Today we're going to be talking to Ashley Immanuel. Ashley has had a very varied career over a number of continents and has worked in a number of African countries. I got to know Ashley when she was working for Athena, but that's just one of the few things that she's done. Well, let's go over to her and let's start the interview. So, welcome to the podcast interview. Let's get started. Can you tell us a little about who you are, your background, and the institution that you're working for?
Hi, my name is Ashley Immanuel. I'm the co-founder and chief operating officer of a company called Semicolon that's driving Africa's digital transformation by building tech-focused talent and businesses. Prior to Semicolon, I was chief executive officer of an organization called Athena that promotes financial inclusion in Nigeria, and also have a background in management consulting.
Thanks a lot for that. So, the podcasts are all about sharing knowledge. So, can you bring us up to date with any exciting projects that you've been on recently?
One interesting project I've worked on recently is something called Nexus. So Semicolon trains software engineers. Some of those software engineers are interested in pursuing the entrepreneurship route after their training. And we have a Semicolon Ventures program to really do venture building, provide the training, support, first check, etc., to really build those businesses out. The founders in that program have strong software engineering training, having gone through the Semicolon software engineering program. They have oftentimes some relevant professional experience prior to joining Semicolon. But we all know that to run a business really requires a much broader set of skills in addition to that. So the Nexus program is something that Semicolon has undertaken in partnership with Lagos Business School in Nigeria, as well as Henley Business School at the University of Reading in the UK, with funding support from the British Council. And basically, it's a rigorous business management training program for the founders, almost like a mini MBA, to really position them to get to the stage of investment readiness with their business, and really be positioned in the long term to run and manage a business successfully. We're just in the final stages of the Nexus program with our first round of founders. They're going through their final investment readiness assessment. They've done their first round of pitches. They're about to graduate. So that's been really interesting and exciting to see. I would say another project that's been really interesting is building out a digital platform. So Semicolon has started with a face-to-face training model. We've now built out a platform that enables us to link talent to jobs, but also to provide learning and development through digital and hybrid models. So it's been fun building out that program. It's also been fun because since we train software engineers, many of the people who have built that platform are the people that we've trained. So it's been exciting to get to work with those people in different capacities as they and see them continue to grow now as employees post-training.
Looking back, what's the most memorable moment of your career so far?
That is a really interesting question. So I started my career in management consulting with IBM Global Business Services in the United States. And one project I was interested in and joined was to provide training for the United States Agency for International Development. Basically, we as consultants developed and delivered training for USAID staff about project management and really kind of how their agency worked, the policies, procedures, etc. So it was interesting because it was, in some ways, it was intimidating. I was training as a consultant, I was coming in and training USAID staff about their own agency. Some of those staff were new to the agency or early career. Some of them have worked there 15, 20 years, and for some reason were just required to take this training at this moment in time in order to do some other things. So it was a challenge. It was my first time also developing and delivering corporate training. And we were working with different USAID missions around the world. So we would train in Washington, D.C., but also in different countries where the agency operated. So we were working with different cultures and different contexts. So it was very exciting. It was tremendously interesting. I was very interested in development work at that time, and I really sort of loved every moment of learning about the different kinds of projects that USAID was running. At the same time, like I said, it was a challenge. So I think it's memorable because it's the first time in my career that, and I'd been working maybe a few years at that point, that I had taken on that sort of challenge to not only deliver, but then after some deliveries, lead those trainings in locations around the world. And I also, I think, really, I'd always sort of liked teaching and tutoring, but hadn't really pursued it as a career. And I think that's on that project, I really kind of reconnected with my love of teaching and of learning. So it was just something I really loved doing. It was a kind of the first challenge that I had taken on and really felt that I was successful on. First time I took a really big risk and felt that there was a lot of reward for that.
We've talked a lot about the past and an awful lot of reminiscing. A lot about the future. What have you got planned?
Really excited about what we're doing at Semicolon because I see building tech talent as really one of the most significant impact pathways for individuals, for families, for businesses, for economies, etc. So that's really what I expect to be doing for some time. Really driving toward a vision of a future Africa that's a thriving community of technology talent, and a future where various problems are being addressed by the talent that we've helped develop collectively. So that's really what I'm looking forward to in the future. I'm passionate about it. I'm excited about it. I think that it's interesting in the space of technology. I think that the place where technology connects to people is really interesting. Learning is a really fascinating space. As many things as we've invented, the human mind is still the most complex object in the known universe right now. And there's a lot that we're still kind of year by year at this moment learning about it. So but I'm also quite convinced that um, there are ways to be teaching and learning and communicating and collaborating that are much better than what we have in existence right now in 2022. So I'm really excited about over time exploring that, really, and kind of working collaboratively with different partners in Nigeria, in Africa, around the world, really on driving that learning, development, and collective building of talent.
So, what keeps you up at night? Is the future bright, or are we all toiling in vain? Which direction do you think fintech is going in the future?
The future has to be bright, Joe. I don't think we have a choice. I don't accept the alternative. It has to be bright. I think that we have work to do, but I'm really excited actually by what I see. If we just take Nigeria for example, so I grew up in the United States, moved to Nigeria in 2012. I then moved away for about 4 years after living here for a couple years. So I was gone pretty much exactly 4 years before moving back in 2019, and it was really interesting to see what had changed and what had stayed the same. What had stayed the same, I feel like you saw the same pothole in the same road, causing the same traffic. We were different political leaders, but some of the conversations that feel the same. But at the same time, I felt like two things had really changed. One was the skyline in Lagos was changing, but more interestingly to me, the tech sector. So that had really visibly changed between when I left kind of late 2014 and when I returned beginning of 2019. So I think sometimes when we're here, we don't always recognize the growth. But I do think we've made progress. If we look at fintech specifically, when I first moved to Nigeria in 2012, anywhere I went, I either carried the cash to pay for the thing I wanted, or we were prepared. Somebody would leave the dining table and go to the ATM to pay our bill at the end of the night. Because even in Lagos, going to places that have POS, you still, the system wasn't reliable, right? That's different now. There's a lot, if we take enough time and we start to look back, I think we see enough transformation has happened, and I think the rate of transformation, in many ways, can continue to accelerate. So generally, I'm optimistic. I do think in many parts of the world, but particularly in Nigeria, it's critical. If we look at the numbers, I mean, when COVID hit, people were talking about crisis. And I was sort of curious because I felt like we've been in a crisis for a very long time, right? You look at our child mortality rate, 1 in 8 Nigerian children does not live to age 5. That's a crisis, right? We look at trends. The population is growing faster than GDP. I recently was out of the country for 2 weeks, hadn't been to the supermarket, maybe 3 weeks in total. Went back on Saturday, all the prices have changed. There's just increasing pressure that's being added to this pressure cooker. So I think there is a lot of urgency. I definitely think that there is risk of things starting to go very well. We're in crisis. There's risk of the crisis becoming worse, but at the same time, I just feel like we have no choice. We have to do something. We have to collectively achieve the positive future. The negative one is not an option.
It's your lucky day. If I could provide you with unlimited time, money, and any other resources that you wanted, what fintech-related project would you take on?
I'm in the talent space, so it would have to be related to talent, which I do think, I believe, but also I know because of my time at Defina and the research we've done. The talent gap is really a key constraint for fintechs, and competing for talent is going to be increasingly important and increasingly a challenge. Another recent report out by McKinsey just underscored that fact once again. So I think if I had unlimited time, unlimited money, other resources, I would really take on turning this army of job seekers that we have in Nigeria and across Africa into an army of talented innovators and job creators. We've done it to some extent. I think that there's a lot more we can experiment with. What we've done, when I say to some extent, I mean we've graduated about 250 people so far. We've got about 450 who've gone through the program. The remainder still in process. So the scale is still at the early stages, although we anticipate ramping up. But I think that there's just so much more that could be done if we can scale existing models, if we can also innovate, drive new models, really there's no reason why we can't really transform all of these vast sort of raw human resources that we have into tremendous talent.
We're currently living in a Japan nation time. If you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell them?
I would probably tell my 18-year-old self to be less complacent, to not sort of go with the flow and be carried where things take you, but rather to be proactive, be bold, really not be content with the status quo, and to really move quickly. My career has always been driven by wanting to achieve impact. I may not have sort of fully known or defined this at age 18, but sort of early to mid 20s, that was clear. And really, every time I've made a decision related to work or life, really, it's been with that central focus in mind. Really, what's going to have the most impact, which is why I am where I am now. I think that, in hindsight, I probably spent too much time early on, sort of staying in roles that were okay, but not really that impactful. Maybe being content to sort of follow predefined steps that were easily visible because that's what my peers were doing in terms of how their careers were progressing. As I've gotten older, I've learned that if you really want to drive impact, if you want to really address problems, you have to, there's a sense of urgency that we have to have. We really need to be quite proactive, quite aggressive, unrelenting, but also really drive and kind of push to do those things and do them now.
Thank you for listening to this Publish.Africa podcast. Publish.Africa podcasts teach entrepreneurs like you how to navigate the African free trade area business world. No matter what level of business you are involved with, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice when you listen to a Publish.Africa podcast. You can find a wide variety of similar podcasts at Publish.Africa.